It was a gloomy evening when I first met Jonathan, the man who would become my husband. The air crackled with electricity as our eyes locked across the crowded room. His smile was captivating, and his charm pulled me in like a moth to a flame. We danced the night away, laughter filling the spaces between us. In those early days, our love felt invincible, unyielding to the trials that life had in store for us. But as time passed, our once harmonious melody began to falter. The tune that was once sweet became a discordant cacophony, punctuated by the clashes of our contrasting personalities. Our arguments started small, insignificant blips on the radar of our relationship. Disagreements over whose turn it was to take out the trash or whose turn it was to cook dinner snowballed into full-blown battles. Our words became sharper, our tempers hotter, until we found ourselves entangled in a web of resentment. One evening, the atmosphere in our home was heavy with tension. The scent of dissatisfaction lingered in the air as we tiptoed around each other, carefully avoiding the landmines of our discontent. The breaking point was near, and I could sense it like an impending storm. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation that awaited us. "Jonathan," I called out, my voice betraying a hint of the fatigue that had settled within me. "We can't continue like this. The constant fighting is tearing us apart." He turned to face me, his brows furrowed in frustration. "Oh, don't be so dramatic," he retorted, his tone dripping with condescension. "Every couple fights. It's normal." "But it's not just about the fights," I pleaded, my voice cracking. "It's the way we fight, the words we hurl at each other. It's toxic, Jonathan. We're toxic to each other." He scoffed, dismissing my concerns with a wave of his hand. "You're overreacting, as always. This is just a rough patch. We'll get through it." Tears welled up in my eyes as the weight of his indifference crushed my spirit. "I don't want to get through it anymore," I confessed, my voice barely above a whisper. "I want to be happy, and I don't think we can find that happiness together." A heavy silence hung between us, pregnant with the weight of our broken love. In that moment, I realized that the foundation of our relationship had crumbled beneath our feet. The thought of divorce, once a distant possibility, now loomed in the forefront of my mind. Jonathan's eyes darted around the room, searching for words that could mend what was irreparably broken. But in that fragile silence, we both knew that the battles had taken their toll. Our love had become a fractured masterpiece, a shattered mirror reflecting our shattered hearts. And so, with a heavy heart and a resolve tinged with sadness, I made a decision. It was time to find solace, seek guidance, and take the first steps toward a life where love was not synonymous with pain. Months turned into years, and the battles between us grew more frequent and intense. The cracks in our relationship deepened, widening the chasm that separated us. Each argument became a battleground where our love was the casualty. It was on one such evening, as storm clouds gathered both outside and within, that I turned to the virtual realm of Reddit. The anonymous corners of the internet became my confidant, a space where I could pour out my frustrations and seek solace in the experiences of others. With trembling fingers, I typed out my woes in a subreddit dedicated to relationships. The words spilled onto the screen, a desperate plea for guidance from those who had traversed the treacherous terrain of a faltering marriage. The responses flooded in, a mix of empathy, advice, and cautionary tales. I soaked them in, their virtual embrace offering me a semblance of understanding that seemed elusive in my own home. Days turned into nights as I delved deeper into the virtual sanctuary of Reddit. I found myself returning to the same subreddit, reading stories of couples who'd survived the storm and those who had chosen to go their separate ways. Each tale resonated within me, serving as both a warning and a beacon of hope. One evening, as the sun cast its golden hues across our living room, I mustered the courage to broach the topic of our unraveling relationship once more. Jonathan reclined on the couch, engrossed in his phone, oblivious to the growing turmoil within me. "Jonathan," I started tentatively, my voice quivering. "We need to talk. This can't go on like this. We can't keep hurting each other." He looked up, his brow furrowed in annoyance. "What now?" he snapped, his frustration palpable. Can't you see I'm busy? Tears welled up in my eyes, threatening to spill over. I'm sorry if I'm interrupting your precious screen time, I retorted, my voice laced with bitterness. But this is important. Our relationship is falling apart, Jonathan. We can't keep pretending that everything is okay. He sighed, his irritation giving way to resignation. Fine, let's talk, he muttered, reluctantly setting his phone aside. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding in my chest. I've been seeking advice online, I confessed, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what else to do. I'm scared, Jonathan. Scared that we're losing each other. He scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. Advice from strangers on the internet? Really? You're willing to trust them more than me? It's not about trust, I countered, tears streaming down my cheeks. It's about finding a way to fix this. I love you, but I can't keep living like this. We need help, Jonathan. We need to find a way back to each other. His gaze softened, a flicker of realization crossing his eyes. I don't want to lose you either, he admitted, his voice tinged with vulnerability. Maybe we can try counseling or something. Anything to make this work. In that moment, a glimmer of hope emerged from the wreckage of our relationship. Perhaps, just perhaps, we could salvage what was left and rebuild the love that had once been our foundation. But deep down, I couldn't shake the lingering doubts that whispered in the recesses of my mind. Would counseling be enough? Or were we destined to be casualties of a love that had fractured beyond repair? Only time would tell as we embarked on a journey to navigate the stormy waters of our troubled marriage. The days turned into weeks, and the tension between Jonathan and me reached an unbearable crescendo. The atmosphere in our home was suffocating, burdened by the weight of our constant bickering and unspoken resentment. The breaking point was inevitable, lurking on the horizon like a storm gathering its strength. It was a cloudy afternoon when our love finally shattered, the fragments falling around us like shards of broken glass. The air crackled with an intensity that mirrored our fraying emotions. Every word spoken became a weapon, each accusation a blow to our already fragile bond. In the heart of the storm, we stood face to face, our eyes locked in a battle of wills. Emotion swirled within me, a tumultuous mixture of anger, sadness, and exhaustion. I could feel the weight of our crumbling love pressing down on my chest, threatening to suffocate me. I can't do this anymore, Jonathan, I uttered, my voice trembling with the weight of my decision. The constant fighting, the hurtful words. It's tearing us apart. I want a divorce. He recoiled, his eyes widening in shock. What? Are you serious? He exclaimed, his voice a mixture of disbelief and wounded pride. After everything we've been through, tears welled up in my eyes as I mustered the strength to meet his gaze. Yes, I'm serious, I replied, my voice firm. I can't live like this. We deserve better than this toxic cycle. Jonathan's face contorted with anger, his fists clenched tightly at his sides. You think you're so perfect, don't you? He spat, his words dripping with venom. You always find a reason to blame me for everything. A surge of frustration coursed through my veins, fueled by years of pent-up resentment. This is not about blame, I countered, my voice tinged with sadness. It's about acknowledging that we're both responsible for the state of our relationship, but I refuse to stay in a relationship, but I refuse to stay in a loveless marriage. His eyes bore into mine, the silence hanging heavy between us. The realization that our journey had reached an irrevocable crossroad settled within our souls. We stood on the precipice of a life-altering decision, the path forward unclear and uncertain. I never thought it would come to this, Jonathan whispered, his voice filled with a mixture of resignation and regret. But if that's what you want, then I won't stand in your way. The weight of his words landed heavily on my heart, a bittersweet confirmation of the rift that had grown between us. Our love, once a beacon of hope, had been reduced to ashes. The breaking point had arrived, ripping apart the fabric of our union. As the gravity of our decision settled upon us, a heavy silence enveloped the room. The echoes of our shattered love reverberated through the empty space, a poignant reminder of the dreams we once held and the future we had lost. With tear-streaked cheeks and a mixture of sorrow and relief, I turned away from Jonathan, my heart heavy with the weight of our broken love. The road ahead was unknown and daunting, but the certainty of my decision sparked a glimmer of hope, a possibility for a life free from the suffocating grip of constant conflict. In the midst of preparing for the divorce, an unexpected revelation sent shockwaves through the already fractured foundation of our crumbling marriage. Jonathan, fueled by his greed and entitlement, threatened to sue me for half of my fortune. Little did he know, I held a secret, a trump card tucked away for the opportune moment. It was a rainy afternoon when Jonathan approached me with a wicked grin playing on his lips, his eyes glinting with avarice. "You think you can just leave me with nothing?" he sneered, his voice laced with venom. "I'll take what's rightfully mine, even if it means fighting you in court." My heart raced, a mixture of fear and determination coursing through my veins. I had prepared for this moment, quietly and meticulously safeguarding my wealth in a way Jonathan could never fathom. The entirety of my fortune lay hidden, cleverly registered under my mother's name. I met his gaze, my expression a mask of calm resolve. "If you want to play this game, Jonathan," I retorted, my voice steady, "then let's see how it unfolds. But know this, you won't find what you're looking for." Confusion flickered across his face, his arrogance momentarily shaken. "What are you talking about?" he demanded, his voice tinged with uncertainty. I allowed myself a small, knowing smile. "You see, my dear husband," I revealed, "my entire fortune, the one you covet so desperately, is in my mother's name. You never bothered to dig that deep, did you?" His eyes widened, a mix of shock and anger contorting his features. "You're lying!" he spat, desperation seeping into his voice. "You're just trying to manipulate me." I shook my head, my smile growing wider. "I assure you I'm not. My mother, bless her soul, agreed to hold my wealth in her name, a precaution against situations like these. You were blinded by your greed, Jonathan. You never saw it coming." Jonathan's face paled, his bravado crumbling before my eyes. The realization of his impending defeat settled upon him like a suffocating cloak. The tables had turned, and I held the upper hand in this high-stakes game of revenge. As the truth hung heavy in the air, an unsettling silence settled between us. The magnitude of my revelation sunk in, leaving Jonathan to grapple with the repercussions of his own actions. The courtroom battle that lay ahead would be a test of his resolve, a battle he was ill-prepared to fight. With newfound determination, I made a vow to myself. I would expose Jonathan's insatiable greed, his true motives laid bare for the world to see. The court would become the battleground where my revenge would unfold, and I would not rest until his aspirations of claiming my fortune were shattered. The storm of emotions swirled within me. Vindication, empowerment, and a touch of sadness. I had transformed from a victim of his manipulations into a formidable opponent, ready to unveil the hidden truths and claim justice for the pain he had inflicted. As the rain continued to pour outside, mirroring the tumult within our lives, I knew that the path ahead would be treacherous, but armed with the revelation of my hidden wealth, I was prepared to face the storm and make Jonathan pay for underestimating the strength of a woman scorned. As the divorce proceedings loomed before us, the allure of revenge tugged at the frayed edges of my being. Jonathan's betrayal, his attempt to claim my fortune, had fueled a fire within me that burned with a newfound determination. Revenge beckoned, and I was ready to answer its call. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation as the day of reckoning arrived. A sense of nervous energy pulsed through my veins, mingling with the icy resolve that had settled within me. I took my seat, my gaze fixed firmly on the entrance, awaiting Jonathan's arrival. He entered, his face a mask of false confidence, but I could see the flicker of uncertainty dancing in his eyes. His voice carried a hint of arrogance as he addressed the court, proclaiming his entitlement to my wealth. Little did he know, the tables had turned, and his undoing awaited him. The proceedings began, the air thick with tension and the weight of our shattered love. Lawyers presented their arguments, painting a picture of our tumultuous marriage, the battles we'd had fought, and the irreconcilable differences that had brought us to this point. As the time for my defense approached, a surge of adrenaline coursed through me. I rose from my seat, a vision of strength and resilience, and stepped forward to address the court. The room fell silent, all eyes upon me. "Your Honor," I began, my voice steady and unwavering, "I stand before you not just as a woman seeking justice, but as someone who has been deceived and manipulated. My husband claims entitlement to my fortune, unaware of the truth that lies in the shadows." Jonathan's eyes darted nervously, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. He tried to interject, but the judge silenced him with a stern glance. I continued, my voice growing in strength. "You see, Your Honor, the entirety of my wealth, the very wealth my husband seeks to claim, is not in my name. It resides in the name of my late mother, hidden from the grasp of greed and deceit." Gasps rippled through the courtroom, whispers of disbelief filling the air. The truth hung heavy, Jonathan's face etched with a mix of shock and desperation. The judge raised an eyebrow, his gaze shifting between Jonathan and me. "Is this true?" he inquired, his tone laced with skepticism. I nodded, my gaze unwavering. "Absolutely, Your Honor. I can provide the necessary documentation to prove the ownership of the assets. My husband's claims are unfounded, driven by a desire to take what is not rightfully his." Jonathan's shoulders slumped, the weight of his miscalculation crushing his spirit. "This can't be," he muttered, his voice barely audible. I seized the opportunity, my voice laced with a mix of triumph and compassion. "Your Honor, I don't seek revenge or to see my husband left with nothing, but I do implore you to consider the truth and the intent behind his claims. I ask for a fair and just division of our shared assets, leaving his deceit unrewarded." The judge studied both of us, his expression stern yet contemplative. After a moment of deliberation, he delivered his verdict. Based on the evidence presented, it is clear that the wealth in question does not belong to the defendant. Therefore, the claims for division of property are dismissed. A sense of vindication washed over me as the weight of the judge's words settled in. Jonathan, the architect of his own downfall, stared ahead, his eyes filled with a mix of defeat and disbelief. In that moment, I realized that revenge had not been my true goal. It was justice, a reaffirmation that deceit and greed would not prevail. As I left the courtroom, the echoes of victory reverberated through the corridors, a testament to the strength of a woman who had risen from the ashes and found her power. The taste of revenge, bittersweet and fleeting, lingered in the air. But more importantly, I had discovered my resilience, my ability to navigate treacherous waters and emerge on the other side, stronger than ever before. The courtroom hummed with anticipation as the battle for justice unfolded. It was a scene straight out of a legal drama, the atmosphere charged with tension and the weight of our fractured relationship. The fate of our wealth and our future hung in the balance as the courtroom drama began to unfold. My lawyer, a seasoned professional with a sharp wit and a no-nonsense demeanor, stood beside me. With each passing moment, her confidence became my pillar of strength. We were prepared for this moment, armed with evidence that would expose Jonathan's deceit and secure my victory. Jonathan, his face etched with a mix of apprehension and false bravado, sat on the opposite side of the courtroom. His lawyer, a slick and persuasive individual, tried to exude an air of superiority. But beneath the facade, I could sense their unease, a hint of doubt in their eyes. The judge, a figure of authority and impartiality, presided over the proceedings with a steady gaze. The weight of our stories, our claims, lay upon his shoulders, and his decision would shape the course of our lives. As the trial commenced, the courtroom became a stage for the unraveling of our secrets and the exposure of our true intentions. Lawyers presented their arguments, weaving narratives of love gone sour, the bitterness of our clashes, and the irreparable damage to our marriage. My lawyer, with her piercing intellect and strategic finesse, meticulously laid out the evidence of Jonathan's deceit. Financial documents, witness testimonies, and a trail of hidden transactions painted a vivid picture of his attempts to manipulate the truth. Amidst the courtroom drama, the cross-examinations became the battleground where truth clashed with deception. My lawyer's sharp questioning tore through the veil of Jonathan's lies, exposing the cracks in his carefully constructed facade. In a moment of vulnerability, Jonathan took the stand, his voice trembling with a mix of anger and desperation. "I deserve my fair share," he declared, his words carrying a tone of entitlement. "She cannot hoard the wealth that should be rightfully divided." I rose from my seat, my gaze steady, and locked eyes with him. "Jonathan, you knew the consequences of your actions," I countered, my voice firm. "You sought to claim what was never yours to begin with. The truth will prevail?" The courtroom held its breath, the air thick with anticipation, as the judge weighed the evidence and listened to the arguments. Moments stretched into eternity as we awaited his decision, the outcome that would shape our futures. Finally, the judge broke the silence, his voice resonating with authority. "After careful consideration of the evidence presented, it is clear that the wealth in question is not the property of the defendant. The claims for division of property are hereby dismissed." A surge of triumph coursed through me as the judge's words echoed through the room. Justice had prevailed, and the truth had emerged from the shadows, triumphant and unwavering. Jonathan's face contorted with a mix of shock, anger, and defeat. "This can't be happening," he murmured, his voice laced with bitterness. But there was no turning back. The courtroom drama had reached its climax, the final act unfolding with a resounding victory. As I walked out of the courtroom, the weight of the battle lifted from my shoulders, replaced by a renewed sense of freedom and empowerment. Revenge, once a driving force, had transformed into a quest for justice. The courtroom drama had provided the platform for truth to prevail, for the lies to crumble, and for a woman to emerge stronger than ever before. As the dust settled from the courtroom drama, I thought my battle was won. The victory was sweet, the taste of justice lingering on my lips. But little did I know that fate had one final twist in store for me, a revelation that would test the limits of my resilience. Weeks had passed since the verdict, and life began to settle into a semblance of normalcy. The scars of the past were healing, and the future beckoned with promise. I believed I had left Jonathan behind, a mere ghost of my past. One evening, as I sat in the comfort of my study, enveloped by the soft glow of lamplight, a letter arrived. Its contents bore the mark of intrigue and uncertainty. My hands trembled as I broke the seal and unfolded the parchment. The words that spilled onto the page sent shockwaves through my being. It was a confession, a final act of desperation from Jonathan himself. He admitted to a secret, a hidden scheme that could unravel the foundations of my victory. Fear and anger churned within me as I read his words. How could he still possess power over me? What else could he possibly reveal that would threaten the life I had fought so hard to rebuild? I picked up the phone, my fingers dialing my lawyer's number with a mix of urgency and trepidation. As the line connected, I could hear the familiar voice on the other end. "Emily, what's wrong?" my lawyer asked, concern lacing her tone. "Jonathan, he sent me a letter," I stammered, my voice quivering. "He claims to have evidence, something that could jeopardize everything." There was a momentary pause, a weighty silence that hung between us. Then, with a resolute tone, my lawyer spoke. "Emily, we won't let him destroy everything you've fought for. Bring the letter to my office tomorrow morning. We'll strategize and face this head on." Her words were a balm to my frayed nerves, a reassurance that I wasn't alone in this battle. I clung to the hope that together we could weather the storm that threatened to unravel my hard-earned victory. The following morning, I arrived at my lawyer's office, the weight of Jonathan's confession heavy upon me. The room exuded an air of determination as we gathered around the table, poring over the damning letter and its implications. "He claims to have evidence of hidden assets," my lawyer remarked, her eyes scanning the document. "If true, it could complicate matters." "But how?" I questioned, my voice tinged with a mix of anxiety and frustration. "We've already proven that the wealth is in my mother's name. There's nothing more he can do." My lawyer sighed, her brows furrowed in thought. "We need to assess the validity of his claims," she replied. "We'll launch an investigation, dig deeper into his allegations. If it's mere smoke and mirrors, we'll expose it. If it's mere smoke and mirrors, we'll expose it. If there's even a shred of truth, we'll confront it head." Days turned into weeks as the investigation unfolded, the tension building with each passing moment. The final twist, the one Jonathan had promised, dangled before me like a sword of Damocles. I knew I had to be prepared for whatever revelations lay ahead. As the truth gradually emerged, the final twist took shape. It turned out that Jonathan's claims were nothing more than a desperate attempt to regain control. The evidence he presented was flimsy and inconsequential, a feeble attempt to tear down the fortress I had built. In the end, the final twist was nothing more than an empty threat, a last gasp. A man consumed by bitterness and defeat. With the truth on my side, I emerged unscathed, fortified by the knowledge that I had prevailed against the odds. The battle was finally over, and the scars of our fractured love began to fade. I stood tall, a testament to the strength of the human spirit. The final twist had tested my resolve, but it had not broken me. As I closed the chapter on my past, I embraced the future with open arms. I'd emerged from the crucible of adversity, a phoenix reborn, ready to forge a new path filled with hope, resilience, and the unwavering belief in the power of justice.